Hi, my name is Jean-Frédéric Morin. I'm professor at Laval University and Canada Research Chair in International Political Economy. This presentation will introduce you to some preliminary findings from a novel dataset on the polycentric governance of outer space. The Earth orbit can be described as a common pool resource. There is no central authority to coordinate who is doing what in outer space. And this creates collective action problems, such as the accumulation of space debris. Space debris are human-made non-functional objects orbiting Earth. They include abandoned fuel tanks, defunct satellites, and fragments from satellite collisions. The growing amount of debris increases the risk of collision with spacecrafts and functional satellites, on which we all rely for weather forecasting, traffic control, geolocation, broadcasting, and communication. Scholars have very well characterized this governance problem. There's a consensus in the literature that the existing multilateral institutions are insufficient. There's also a plethora of policy proposals on how to improve space governance, most of them advocating for centralized mechanisms, such as a multilateral regulatory regime or a global tax. However, there is little empirical investigation on how the various space actors are actually collaborating to address their collective problems. We often hear that there's a proliferation of space actors, but how many exactly? Who are they? Where are they from? What are they doing? SpaceX is clearly not a typical space actor. In fact, SpaceX might be the tree that is hiding the forest. And with this project, we want to explore the entire ecosystem of space governance. An ecosystem that is made of various species of actors that are interacting in complex ways.
Dr. Ethan Tepper and I put together a team of research assistants. And together, we used several techniques to collect data on the space governance ecosystem. We tapped into existing databases, we contacted hundreds of different people around the world, including space agencies, archive centers, and governmental ministries. And we submitted applications under the Freedom of Information Act of various countries.
Perhaps you even received a survey from us that looked just like this. So far, we have identified 1,500 different space actors. We consider as a space actor any organization that designs, owns, launches, operates, tracks, monitors, regulates objects in space or has concrete plans to do so in the next 3 years. As you can see here, there's a growing number of space actors. The last decade in particular has seen a rapid proliferation of them. However, the growth rate from 1960 to 2010 was already quite impressive, and this is something that the current literature on new space is overlooking. Here you have the cumulative number of countries where space actors are located. Again, as you can see, the growth rate has been relatively constant over time. This is the growth of space actors in high-income countries in blue relative to low and middle-income countries in red. Both groups of countries have seen a growth in their number of space actors, but the gap is not narrowing. In fact, it is expanding. On this bar chart, you can see that the US remains by far the country with the highest number of space actors. In terms of types of actors, there's a clear shift from public to private organizations. In the 60s, most space actors were governmental actors, in pink or in purple here in this figure. Today, the vast majority of space actors are for-profit organizations, in green here. But what is often underappreciated is that this shift started already back in the 70s. That said, the rapid growth in private actors, in green here, is limited to high-income countries on the right. In low and in middle-income countries on the left, most space actors remain public organizations, in pink or in purple here. This is the distribution of space actors per field of activity. Many space actors own, operate, and design space objects, and relatively few actors track or regulate them. This is their distribution in sectors or industries. Remote sensing, telecom, and in-space research are dominant. And even though space tourism, space mining, and space debris are attracting a lot of attention in the media, they remain quite marginal sectors. Space actors have impressive resources. As you can see, many of them have a budget over $50 million per year. Also, many of them have more than 500 employees. This is particularly impressive considering that the vast majority of space actors are entirely devoted to their space activities. This was less the case in the 60s. At that time, several space actors were actually multi-industry actors, and space was just one of their activities. But these multi-industry actors are increasingly rare today. And because an increasing share of space actors are specialized in space activities, and because an increasing share of them are private actors, the average size of new space actors, measured in terms of budget or number of employees, is actually decreasing, and it has been decreasing for the last 50 years. Most of these small organizations are located in high-income countries, here in green. There's also several large organizations in high-income countries. In contrast, developing countries, in red, tend to have average size organizations. And this is the case whether you look at organizations' budget or number of employees. We are also interested in the arrangements that these actors have concluded together. And by arrangement, I mean any agreement that was concluded voluntarily by at least two space actors. So far, we have identified more than 1,400 different arrangements. They include share guidelines, information sharing platforms, memorandums of understanding, political declarations, resolutions, codes of conduct, and industry standards. There has been an explosion of arrangements in the last decade. Actually, the acceleration in the number of new arrangements is much more impressive than the proliferation of new space actors. The vast majority of these arrangements are bilateral. That's why many of them go unnoticed. Individually, they might not be so critical, but collectively, these bilateral arrangements might create something that is greater than their sum, a real governance system. What is remarkable is that this emerging governance system is not limited to high-income countries. An increasing share of arrangements include space actors from developing countries, whether it is in North-South arrangements or in South-South arrangements. As a result, arrangements are uniting space actors that are increasingly heterogeneous. There are different ways to measure heterogeneity, and this is just one of them, based on the difference between the country with the highest and the country with the smallest GDP from which signatories to a new arrangements are from. And as you can see, in the 80s, most arrangements were concluded among actors coming from countries with similar GDP levels. And today, even though several developing countries are catching up in terms of their GDP, there is more variation among countries that are part of new space arrangements. These are just some preliminary results. We're currently analyzing the text of the arrangements that we have collected so far.
We're interested in several design features of space arrangements. These design features include rules to share data and information, communication channels to engage with non-members, procedures to update and amend the arrangements, and mechanisms to settle disputes. Our research assistants are currently using the software NVivo to look for these design features in all the arrangements that we have collected. And we hope to find out how innovative solutions to collective action problems, such as space debris, arise and diffuse in the system. Then we will use network analysis to map the emergence of the space governance system. We're looking for signs of an emerging polycentric network that incrementally self-organizes to manage the Earth orbit sustainably.
In the meantime, if you would like to collaborate, just contact us. Perhaps you have research questions in mind or ideas on how to exploit the dataset that we have not even considered. We will also conduct interviews with space actors themselves because we're interested in their perspective. So if you have experience in this field, and if you are willing to share your thoughts, we want to learn from you. Please contact us.